The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that presses against your chest and makes it hard to breathe. She sat on the floor, surrounded by blank canvases she'd bought 3 months ago. They were supposed to help. Her therapist had suggested it. Try expressing yourself through art, she'd said, as if picking up a paintbrush could somehow fill the enormous hole that had opened up in her life. 6 months. It had been 6 months since she got that phone call. 6 months since she rushed to the hospital. 6 months since she learned that her younger brother was gone, and there was nothing anyone could do to bring him back. The canvases remained blank because she couldn't even begin to know where to start. How do you paint the worst day of your life? How do you draw the feeling of your world falling apart? Her phone buzzed. Another text from her mom. She didn't open it. She knew what it would say. The same things her mom had been saying for months now. Are you eating? Please call me back. We need to talk about the house. But talking was the problem. Every conversation felt like walking through a minefield. Her parents had retreated into themselves, each dealing with their grief in separate corners of silence. Her dad had thrown himself into work, staying at the office until late every night. Her mom cleaned the house obsessively, reorganizing the same closets over and over again. And her? She'd stopped going out, stopped seeing friends, stopped pretending she was okay. Her friends had tried at first. They'd sent messages, left voicemails, showed up at her door with food she couldn't eat. But grief is exhausting for everyone, not just the person experiencing it. After a while, the messages became less frequent. The visits stopped. She understood. What could they possibly say that would make any of this better? It was 3 in the morning when she gave up on sleep entirely. She'd been lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in her mind like a movie she couldn't turn off. All the signs she'd missed. All the conversations where she'd been too busy to really listen. All the times she'd said, "I'll call you later," and then forgot to call. The guilt was the worst part. It sat in her stomach like a stone, heavy and cold and constant. She walked past the blank canvases again, and this time something made her stop. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe she just needed to do something. Anything. To let out even a tiny bit of what was trapped inside her. She picked up a piece of charcoal. Not paint. Paint felt too deliberate, too planned. Charcoal was raw and messy and imperfect. Her hand moved across the paper before her brain could catch up. Dark lines. Heavy pressure. No plan, no sketch, no idea of what she was creating. She just let her hand move, responding to something deeper than thought. The figure that emerged was curled up, small, folded in on itself. Around it, she drew shadows that looked almost like hands reaching out but never quite touching. The space between the figure and the shadows felt important somehow, like it represented something she couldn't put into words. She stepped back and looked at what she'd created. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't the kind of art you'd hang in a gallery. But it was true. It was exactly how she felt. Alone, surrounded by darkness, untouchable. For the first time in 6 months, something inside her chest loosened. Just a little. Just enough to take a full breath. She looked at the stack of blank canvases. 30 of them. She'd bought them in a moment of optimism she could barely remember now. 30 felt like a lot. It also felt like a challenge. What if she did this every day? What if she drew exactly how she felt without trying to make it pretty or meaningful or acceptable? Just raw, honest documentation of grief. The idea scared her. It also felt like the only thing that made sense. She grabbed her laptop and created a new account on social media. Not her regular account where her friends and family could see. A completely anonymous one. No profile picture, no bio, no name. Just a place to post these drawings where they could exist outside of her small, suffocating apartment. She took a photo of the first drawing with her phone. The lighting was terrible, but she didn't care. She uploaded it with just 2 words, day 1. Then she closed the laptop and went to bed. She didn't sleep well, she never did anymore. But for the first time in months, she didn't lie awake drowning in her thoughts. Instead, she thought about what tomorrow's drawing might look like. The next night, she drew again. This time it was a doorway, but the door was missing. Just an empty frame leading to more darkness. She posted it. Day 2. On the 3rd night, she drew hands covering a face. On the 4th, a figure underwater. Not drowning, but not swimming either, just suspended in the heaviness. On the 5th, a maze with no exit. On the 6th, a mirror reflecting nothing. She never read the comments. She disabled notifications. This wasn't about connecting with people or getting validation. This was about survival, about taking the crushing weight inside her and putting it somewhere outside of herself, even just for a moment. Her therapist noticed the change. "You seem different," she said during their weekly video call. "I'm drawing," she said simply. "That's wonderful." "How does it make you feel?" She thought about it. "Like I can breathe," she said finally. "Not all the time, but while I'm drawing, I can breathe." By the 7th day, it had become a ritual. She'd wait until night when the world felt quieter, and she didn't have to pretend to be functional. She'd sit with her charcoal and her paper, and she'd let whatever needed to come out come out. She wasn't healing. She knew that. Grief doesn't work that way. But she was surviving. Day by day, drawing by drawing, she was finding a way to carry this impossible weight. She had no idea that 3,000 miles away, someone else was looking at those drawings in the middle of the night. Someone who was planning to give up entirely. Someone who would see Day 7's drawing and decide to wait just one more day. She had no idea that her private survival was about to become someone else's lifeline. She just kept drawing. 3,000 miles away, a man sat in the dark with his phone. The screen's glow was the only light in his bedroom. It was 3 in the morning, but sleep had become impossible lately. Or maybe he'd just stopped trying. What was the point of sleep when you dreaded waking up? The note was already written. He'd spent 2 weeks perfecting it, trying to explain the unexplainable, trying to make people understand why he'd reached this point. It sat in his desk drawer, folded neatly, ready. Tonight was supposed to be the night. He'd planned it down to the smallest detail. He'd even cleaned his apartment, not wanting to leave a mess for whoever found him. That's the kind of person he was, considerate even at the end, but his hands wouldn't stop shaking. They'd been shaking for an hour now. He couldn't tell if it was fear or relief or just his body's way of protesting what his mind had decided. So he picked up his phone instead. Not to call anyone. Who would he call at 3 in the morning? His parents, who hadn't really understood him in years? His ex-girlfriend, who'd left 6 months ago saying she couldn't handle his negativity anymore? His work friends, who were more like acquaintances who shared coffee breaks? He just scrolled, mindlessly, through feeds full of people living their best lives, posting vacation photos and engagement announcements and promotions. All these people who seemed to have figured out the secret to being happy, while he couldn't even figure out how to get through a single day. That's when he saw it. A drawing. Black and white. Rough charcoal lines. A figure curled up into a ball, surrounded by shadows that looked almost like hands reaching but never quite touching. There was no caption, no explanation. Just 2 words, Day 7. He stared at it for a long time. Something about it felt familiar. Not the image itself, but the feeling behind it. The isolation. The sense of being surrounded by darkness while the rest of the world stayed just out of reach. His thumb moved almost on its own, clicking on the account. Anonymous. No profile picture. No information. Just drawings, posted 1 per day. He scrolled back through them. Day 6 was a mirror reflecting nothing. Day 5 was a maze with no exit. Day 4 showed hands covering a face. Day 3 was a doorway with no door. Day 2 showed that same empty frame leading to darkness. Day 1 was the figure with the reaching shadows. Each one hit him like a punch to the chest. Not because they were sad, though they were, but because they were honest in a way nothing else in his feed was. No filters, no captions about staying positive or finding the silver lining. Just raw, unfiltered pain put onto paper. Whoever was making these understood. They got it. They knew what it felt like to be drowning while everyone around you kept insisting you just needed to swim harder. He looked at the timestamp on the first drawing, posted 7 days ago, which meant whoever was creating these was still going, still making them, still somehow getting through each day. The shaking in his hands had stopped. He sat up in bed, phone still in his hand, and realized something had shifted. Not fixed, not better, just shifted. He decided to wait, just until tomorrow, just to see what Day 8 would look like. When morning came, he felt like he'd been hit by a truck. Exhaustion settled into his bones, but there was something else too. A tiny, almost imperceptible feeling of curiosity. What would the next drawing be? Work was a blur. He went through the motions, responding to emails, sitting through meetings, nodding at the right moments. His Coworker asked if he was okay. He said he was just tired. It wasn't a lie. He was tired. Tired of everything, but that night he checked the account. Day 8 was posted. A staircase that led both up and down, impossible to tell which way was which. He bookmarked the account. He didn't comment. Didn't like or share. He just saved it where he could find it again. Day 9 was a window covered in cracks. Day 10 was a clock with no hands. Day 11 was a bridge that stopped halfway across. Each night he waited for the new drawing. Each night it appeared like clockwork. And each night he felt that same sense of recognition. Someone out there was documenting their pain day by day, and somehow that made his own pain feel less isolating. He started structuring his days around it. Get through work. Get through the evening. Wait for the drawing. See what tomorrow brought. On day 14, something changed. The drawing showed a figure standing instead of curled up, still surrounded by darkness but upright, fighting. He sat with that image for a long time. The note was still in his drawer. He hadn't thrown it away, but he hadn't read it again either. His mom called that weekend. He almost didn't answer. Their conversations had become strained lately, full of long pauses and things left unsaid. But he picked up. "Hey, sweetheart," she said. "I was just thinking about you." "Hey, Mom, are you eating okay? You sounded tired last time we talked." The usual questions, the usual concern that didn't quite know how to land. But instead of giving his usual short answers, he found himself talking. Really talking. Not about everything. Not about the note in the drawer or the nights he couldn't sleep, but about small things, work, the weather. A funny thing he'd seen online. It wasn't much, but it was something. Day 17 showed a hand reaching up from water. Day 18 showed a tiny crack of light in an otherwise dark wall. Day 19 showed footprints in snow leading forward. He realized he'd stopped making plans. Not plans for living exactly, but he'd also stopped making plans for the alternative. He was just existing, day by day, drawing by drawing. His ex-girlfriend texted him out of nowhere. "Hey, I know this is random, but I hope you're doing okay." He stared at the message for a while. A month ago, he would have ignored it. Or worse, sent back something bitter. Instead, he wrote, "Taking it one day at a time. Hope you're well, too." She responded with a heart emoji. It was small, meaningless probably, but it felt like something. On day 20, he did something he hadn't planned. He created his own anonymous account and left a comment on the drawing. Just a simple one. "This one helped today. Thank you." He didn't know if the artist would ever read it. Didn't know if they'd care. But it felt important to say it anyway. To acknowledge that these drawings, posted into the void by someone he'd never met, had become the thing keeping him tethered to the world. The next morning, he woke up and realized he'd slept through the night. Not well, but he'd slept. He made coffee, took a shower, got dressed, all the small, ordinary things that had felt impossible for so long. The note stayed in the drawer. He still knew it was there. But for the first time in months, it felt like just a piece of paper instead of a plan. He checked his phone. Day 21 was posted. A bird mid-flight, wings spread wide. He saved the image and got ready for work. One more day. He could do one more day. She never read the comments. That was the rule she'd set for herself from the beginning. This project wasn't about other people. It was about getting through each day without falling apart completely. The drawings were for her, not for an audience. But sometimes, late at night when she couldn't sleep, she'd see the notification numbers climbing. 50 comments. 100. 300. People were seeing these drawings. People were responding. She told herself it didn't matter. She'd click past the notifications without opening them and get back to work on the next drawing. Day 22 was hands holding onto a rope. Day 23 was a door, slightly open, light coming through the crack. Day 24 was a garden full of wilted flowers with one small bud starting to bloom. Her therapist noticed the change during their session. "You're different," she said, studying her face through the video call. "Your shoulders aren't as tense. You're making eye contact more." "I'm still sad," she replied. It felt important to say that. Like she needed to clarify that she wasn't betraying her brother's memory by having moments where the grief wasn't crushing her. "Of course you are. Grief doesn't have an expiration date. But you're finding ways to carry it. That's significant." The drawings had become more than just a release. They'd become a routine, a purpose, something that got her out of bed each day, even when everything else felt pointless. She started leaving her apartment again, Small trips at first. To the grocery store. To the coffee shop on the corner. She wasn't ready for big social situations, but she could handle being around people for short periods. At the coffee shop, a barista with kind eyes asked how she was doing. "I'm okay," she said, and for the first time in months it wasn't completely a lie. Her mom called one evening. She almost didn't answer. Their conversations had been so painful lately, both of them trying to comfort each other while drowning in their own grief. "Hi, honey," her mom said, and her voice sounded different, lighter somehow. "Hi, Mom. I was going through some boxes today, found some of his old things. His skateboard. You remember that beat-up skateboard he refused to throw away?" She did remember. Her brother had gotten it when he was 12 and used it until the wheels barely turned. "I was going to cry," her mom continued. "I thought I'd fall apart seeing it. But instead I just smiled. I remembered him trying to teach your dad how to ride it in the driveway. Your dad fell so hard. We all laughed until our sides hurt." She felt tears on her face, but they weren't the heavy, crushing tears she'd become used to. They were softer somehow, bittersweet. "I miss him so much," her mom said. "Me too. But I'm glad we had him, even if it wasn't long enough. I'm glad he was ours." They talked for over an hour. Really talked in a way they hadn't been able to since the funeral. About memories. About regrets. About the impossible task of moving forward while carrying someone's absence. When she hung up, she felt exhausted, but also something else. Connected. Less alone. That night's drawing was different. It was still dark, still sad. But there was something in it that hadn't been there before. She drew a figure holding a light. Not a bright light. Just a candle. Small and flickering, but there. Day 25. Meanwhile, 3,000 miles away, the man who'd been following her drawings was having his own breakthrough. He'd started leaving comments under each new drawing. Nothing elaborate. Just simple things. "Day 12 got me through today. This one made me call my sister. Still here because of these." He didn't know if the artist ever read them, but writing them helped. It made him feel less invisible. Less alone in his struggle. He'd gone to see a doctor. That was huge. He'd avoided it for so long, convinced that admitting he needed help would make him weak. But sitting in that waiting room, he realized that making the appointment was probably the bravest thing he'd done in years. The doctor was kind. Didn't judge. Didn't tell him to just think positive or try yoga. Instead, she listened. Really listened. And then she helped him come up with a plan. Therapy. Maybe medication. Small steps toward feeling like a person again. "How long have you been feeling this way?" she asked. "A long time," he admitted. "But it got really bad about 6 months ago." What changed 6 months ago? He thought about it. His breakup. His promotion at work that somehow made him feel more trapped instead of successful. His best friend moving across the country. A bunch of small things that added up to one big feeling of emptiness. "Everything and nothing," he said finally. She nodded like she understood. "What's been helping lately?" He almost didn't mention the drawings. It felt silly. How could he explain that anonymous charcoal sketches from a stranger had become his lifeline? But he did mention them, and she didn't think it was silly at all. "Connection matters," she said. "Even indirect connection. Knowing someone else understands what you're going through can be powerful." He left that appointment with a prescription and a therapy referral, and something that felt a little bit like hope. That evening, he checked the account. Day 25 was posted, a figure holding a candle in the dark. He stared at it for a long time. Something about it felt like a turning point, like the artist was starting to find their way forward even just a little bit. He left a longer comment than usual. "I was going to give up the night I found your first drawing. I kept coming back. I'm still here. Thank you for staying too." He hit post and closed the app. Didn't wait to see if anyone would respond. It felt good just to say it, to acknowledge what these drawings had meant. She was working on day 26 when her phone buzzed with a notification. She'd gotten so good at ignoring them that she almost swiped it away automatically, but something made her pause. Made her open the comments section for the first time since she'd started the project. There were thousands of messages, people sharing their own stories, people thanking her, people saying her drawings had helped them through dark times. She scrolled through them, tears streaming down her face. She'd thought she was drawing into a void. She'd thought this was just about her own survival. But people were watching. People were connecting with these raw, honest expressions of pain. And somehow her private battle with grief had become something that mattered to strangers. One comment stopped her cold. The longer one. The one about being ready to give up. About coming back each day. About still being here. She read it 3 times. 4 times. 5 times. Someone had been planning to end their life. And her drawings, her messy, unfiltered, desperate attempts to survive, had given them a reason to wait. To keep coming back. To stay. She sat on her apartment floor, surrounded by 25 drawings documenting her worst days, and felt something she hadn't felt in months. Purpose. Not happiness. Not healing. But purpose. Her pain had reached someone, had mattered to someone, had maybe even saved someone. She picked up her charcoal with shaking hands and started on day 26. This time she drew 2 figures. Not together. Not touching, but both holding candles, both standing, both still there. And for the first time since she'd started this project, she added a caption. We're still here. That matters. 3,000 miles away, he saw the new drawing and the caption. He sat in his quiet apartment and cried. Not sad tears, not happy tears. Something in between. Relief, maybe. Recognition. Connection. They were both still here. And somehow, that was enough for today. She couldn't stop thinking about that comment. I was going to give up the night I found your first drawing. The words played on repeat in her mind as she went about her day. While making coffee, while sitting in therapy, while staring at the blank paper that would become day 27. Someone had been ready to die, and somehow, without knowing it, she'd given them a reason to stay. The weight of that realization was almost too much to carry. She'd been so focused on her own survival that she hadn't considered her pain could matter to anyone else. That her private struggle, documented in messy charcoal drawings, could reach across thousands of miles and touch someone in their darkest moment. Day 27 was harder to create than the others. She'd drawn from pure emotion before, not thinking, just feeling. But now she was aware of the audience, aware that people were waiting, that her drawings meant something beyond just her own healing. She drew a path, 2 sets of footprints walking in the same direction but on parallel trails. Close but not quite together. It felt honest. That's what this was. 2 people walking through darkness, aware of each other, but still on their own journeys. The comments section had become something she checked now. Not obsessively, but regularly. Reading the messages felt like opening windows in a room that had been sealed shut for too long. Fresh air rushing in, sometimes overwhelming, but necessary. People shared their stories. A woman who'd lost her husband. A teenager struggling with depression. A father who couldn't forgive himself for missing the signs with his daughter. A veteran who couldn't adjust to civilian life. A college student crushed by pressure and expectations. So many people carrying so much pain. All of them finding something in these simple drawings. All of them saying the same thing in different ways. I thought I was alone. Thank you for showing me I'm not. She started responding to some comments. Not all of them, there were too many, but the ones that felt most urgent. The ones where she could tell someone was barely holding on. I see you, she'd write. Your pain is real. Please stay one more day. Simple words, but she knew from experience that sometimes simple words from a stranger could matter more than elaborate speeches from people who were supposed to love you. Her therapist asked if the project had changed for her now that she knew people were watching. It's different, she admitted. At first it was just for me. Now it feels like, I don't know, like maybe my brother's death doesn't have to be completely meaningless. Like maybe something good can come from this awful thing. That's a beautiful way to honor his memory, her therapist said. She wasn't sure about that. Nothing could honor losing him. Nothing could make it okay that he was gone. But maybe, just maybe, she could help make sure fewer families had to feel this particular kind of pain. On day 28, she made a decision. The project was supposed to end at day 30. That had been the plan. 30 drawings in 30 days. But now it felt wrong to stop. Not when people were relying on these daily posts. Not when someone out there might be counting on seeing day 31. She drew a sunrise. Still mostly dark, but light starting to break through. Not because she felt healed. She didn't. But because she wanted people to know that even in the deepest darkness, morning eventually comes. Even if you can't see it yet. 3,000 miles away, he was having similar thoughts. The drawings had become more than just something to wait for. They'd become proof that survival was possible, that you could sit with unbearable pain and still get up the next day. He'd started therapy. Twice a week, sitting in a small office with a therapist who didn't try to fix him, just helped him understand himself better. It was hard work, harder than he'd expected. Some sessions left him feeling raw and exposed, but he kept going back. He'd reconnected with his sister. They'd never been particularly close, but after seeing one of the drawings about family, he'd called her. Really called her, not just a quick, happy birthday text. I haven't been doing great, he'd told her. I've been really struggling. She'd flown out to visit him the next weekend. They'd spent 2 days just talking about their childhood, about their parents, about the pressure they'd both felt to be perfect, about how isolation had become a habit for both of them. I'm glad you called, she'd said before leaving. I was worried about you. I just didn't know how to say it. He'd started noticing small things again. The way morning light hit his kitchen window, the taste of really good coffee, the satisfaction of finishing a difficult project at work. These weren't big moments of joy, but they were moments. And moments added up to hours, hours to days, days to weeks. He continued leaving comments on each drawing. They'd become his way of checking in, both with the artist and with himself. Day 28 reminded me that change happens slowly, still here, still trying. Other people started responding to his comments, creating threads of conversation, sharing their own experiences. A small community was forming in this anonymous space, all of them connected by their pain and their determination to survive it. On day 29, she did something bold. She posted a drawing, but this time she added a longer caption. Her first real words beyond simple titles. I started these drawings to survive losing my brother. I didn't know anyone would see them. I definitely didn't know they'd matter to anyone else. But reading your comments has changed something for me. You've shown me that sharing our pain doesn't make us weak. It makes us human. It connects us. Tomorrow is day 30, the last day I'd originally planned. But I'm not stopping. I can't stop, not when so many of you are counting on these daily reminders that you're not alone. So this is me, committing to keep going, keep drawing, keep surviving. And I hope you'll keep going too. The drawing showed a circle of candles, each one small, but together creating real light. She hit post and immediately felt terrified. She'd revealed something real, made herself vulnerable. What if people thought it was manipulative? What if they accused her of using her brother's death for attention? But the comments that flooded in weren't criticism. They were gratitude, support, people sharing their own stories of loss, people promising to keep going too. And then she saw his comment, the one from the person who'd been there since the beginning. You saved my life without knowing it. Now I want to live long enough to say thank you properly. Would you be willing to talk? No pressure, just thank you. For everything. Her hands shook as she read it. This stranger, this person who'd been walking a parallel path through darkness, wanted to connect. Really connect. Not just through comments and drawings, but person to person. She sat with the decision for hours. Part of her wanted to keep the anonymity, keep the safety of distance. But another part of her, the part that had been transformed by creating these drawings, knew that real healing required real connection. She typed a response. Yes, let's talk. You saved me too, you know, by showing me that sharing my pain could help someone else carry theirs. We kept each other alive. I think that's worth a conversation. She sent it before she could second-guess herself. Day 30 would come tomorrow, the end of the original project and the beginning of something new. She didn't know what yet. But for the first time since her brother died, she felt genuinely curious about the future. Not happy, not healed, but curious. And that was something. Day 30 was different from all the others. She sat in front of her paper for an hour before making a single mark. This was supposed to be the end of the project, but it didn't feel like an ending anymore. It felt like a beginning. She thought about her brother, about the funeral where she'd stood frozen, unable to cry, unable to speak, unable to process that he was really gone. She thought about the months of suffocating grief that followed, the isolation, the guilt, the feeling that she'd never be okay again. Then she thought about the stranger 3,000 miles away who'd found her drawings in his darkest moment, about all the other people who'd commented, shared their stories, formed connections in this unexpected space, about how her private pain had somehow created a community of survivors. The drawing came together slowly. She drew hands, dozens of them, all reaching toward the center where a single light glowed. Not grabbing or grasping, just reaching, supporting, holding space for each other. She posted it with a caption, Day 30. This was supposed to be the end. But I've learned that survival isn't a destination. It's a practice. Thank you for surviving with me. Let's keep going together. Within minutes, comments flooded in. Hundreds of people saying they'd keep going, that they'd be back tomorrow for Day 31. That they weren't ready to let go of this daily reminder that they weren't alone. Her email notification chimed. A message from the anonymous account. From him. Her heart raced as she opened it. They'd agreed to talk, but she suddenly felt terrified. What if meeting him, even just through email, ruined the connection? What if the reality couldn't live up to what they'd built in this shared space of pain and art? His message was simple. I don't even know your name. And you don't know mine. But I know you better than most people I've met face to face. You've seen my darkest moments through your art. So here's mine. I'm a 32-year-old man who almost didn't make it to 33. I work in tech. I live alone. I haven't told my family how bad things got. But I want to. Because of you. I want to try living honestly instead of just surviving silently. Thank you for giving me that. She read it 3 times. Then she wrote back. I'm 28. I lost my little brother 6 months ago and couldn't figure out how to keep living in a world without him. These drawings were supposed to help me survive. I never imagined they'd help anyone else. But knowing that they reached you, that maybe they saved your life, it's given my pain a purpose I didn't think was possible. You didn't just take from these drawings. You gave something back. You showed me that sharing our struggles isn't selfish. It's necessary. They emailed back and forth over the next few days. Not constantly, but regularly. Sharing pieces of themselves. He told her about the breakup that had left him feeling worthless, about the pressure at work that made him feel trapped, about the family expectations he'd never been able to meet. She told him about the guilt of missing signs, about her parents' grief that mirrored her own, about the suffocating silence that had filled her life before she started drawing. They didn't try to fix each other. That wasn't the point. They just listened, understood, held space for each other's pain without trying to minimize it or rush past it. Day 35 showed 2 figures, still on separate paths, but close enough now that their candles lit the way for both of them. She made another decision. She told him about an idea that had been growing in her mind. What if we did something bigger with this, not for fame or attention? But what if we created a space where people could share their art, their writing, their music, whatever helps them survive? A place where struggling doesn't have to happen in silence. His response came quickly. Yes, absolutely, yes. I've been thinking the same thing. We could call it something simple, like Still Here or One More Day. A reminder that surviving is enough, that you don't have to be healed to be valuable. They started planning, small steps at first, a website, a submission form, guidelines that emphasized raw honesty over polished perfection. They wanted to create what they'd both needed in their darkest moments, proof that other people understood, that pain was shareable, that survival was possible. She told her therapist about the project. I'm proud of you, her therapist said. You're taking something that nearly destroyed you and using it to help others. That's remarkable. I'm not healed, she said quickly. I still have bad days. I still miss him so much it hurts to breathe sometimes. Of course you do. but you're learning to carry grief instead of being buried by it. That's not the same as forgetting or moving on. It's growth. 3 months after day 1, she posted day 90. The drawing showed a garden. Some flowers were blooming. Some were wilted. Some were just beginning to bud. All of them coexisting in the same space. The caption read, 3 months of daily survival. Some days were harder than others. Some days I barely made it. But I'm still here. And so are you. That's not nothing. That's everything. The website launched quietly. Still here, a space for survival art. Within a week, submissions poured in. Paintings, poems, songs, photos, stories, all of them raw and honest and real. People found community there, found understanding, found proof that they weren't alone in their struggles. He submitted something too, a piece of writing about the night he'd found her first drawing, about how close he'd come to giving up, about how art from a stranger had saved his life. She read it and cried. Then she wrote him, "We should meet someday when we're both ready. I want to thank you in person for giving my pain purpose." "I'd like that," he wrote back. "You saved my life. I want you to see the person who's still here because of you." 6 months after day 1, they met at a coffee shop halfway between their 2 cities. It was awkward at first. Strange to see the face of someone who'd been such an important presence while remaining anonymous. But then they started talking. Really talking. And it felt like continuing a conversation they'd been having all along. "I still have bad days," he admitted. "Me too," she said. "But I have good ones now too." That's progress. They talked for hours. About their journeys. About the website that had grown beyond anything they'd imagined. About the messages they received from people saying the community had saved them. "Do you think we would have survived without finding each other?" he asked. She thought about it carefully. "I don't know, maybe not. But I know we survived better together than we would have alone. Even when we didn't know each other's names, we weren't alone." Day 180 showed 2 figures on the same path now, walking forward together. Not fixed, not healed, but moving, growing, surviving. The caption was simple. "We're still here, and that will always matter." The note he'd written 6 months ago was still in his desk drawer. He kept it there, not as a plan but as a reminder of how far he'd come, of how close he'd been to missing everything that came after. Her brother's photo sat on her desk while she drew. She'd stopped feeling guilty about smiling while looking at it. She'd learned that grief and joy could coexist, that honoring someone's memory didn't mean staying stuck in pain. "I think he'd be proud of this," she told her mom, during one of their now regular calls, "of what came from losing him." "I think so too," her mom said. "I think he'd be proud of you." The drawings continued. Day after day, some dark, some lighter, all honest. All proof that surviving was worth it. And 3,000 miles apart, then sitting in the same coffee shop, then eventually becoming real friends who understood each other's darkness. 2 people kept choosing to stay one more day, then another still here, still trying, still mattering. That was enough.